Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every woman's life where she has to pause, look in the mirror, and ask herself a very real question. Girl, what are you doing? Tonight, we're not here to sugarcoat. We're not here to play cute. We're here to call it like it is. With love, with grace, and with power, a woman who lowers her standards to keep temporary people is not lacking love. She's misplacing it. She's choosing presence over peace, noise over nurturing, and oftentimes it doesn't start with a loud, life-altering decision. I know so say. It begins subtly, with a text she shouldn't have answered, a red flag she chose to paint pink, a gut feeling she silenced because she didn't want to seem dramatic. It begins when she tells herself, and maybe I'm asking for too much, when in reality she was just asking the wrong person. We live in a world that teaches women to be accommodating, to be soft, to bend. And while there's strength in softness, there is destruction in shrinking. A woman begins to lower her standards when she forgets her worth, when she starts believing that her value is up for negotiation. She begins to accept breadcrumbs and convinces herself it's a feast. She laughs at jokes that hurt her, tolerates energy that drains her, and entertains connections that confuse her. Why? Because deep down, she believes that having something is better than having nothing. But here's the truth. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some people are seasonal, here to teach lessons, not to be lifelines. And when a woman clings to temporary people, she delays her destiny. She gets so caught up trying to make broken pieces fit that she misses the wholeness that's waiting for her. She turns relationships into rehab centers, trying to heal people who have no desire to be well. She becomes a life coach, a therapist, a second mother when all she wanted was a partner, a friend, a safe space. Lowering your standards doesn't look like one dramatic fall, it's a slow fade. You start saying yes to things that once made you uncomfortable. You stay silent when you should speak. You let disrespect slide because calling it out feels exhausting. And little by little, you lose yourself in the effort to keep someone who was never yours to begin with. You trade self-respect for companionship. You dim your light so others won't feel insecure. You become available for chaos, thinking love should be a battlefield when really love is peace. A temporary person doesn't have the capacity to love you the way you need. They're here for a moment, not a mission. They admire your beauty, but they can't carry your purpose. They're excited by your presence, but intimidated by your power. And yet, when a woman is in a space where she doubts her worth, she sees their inconsistency as mystery. She mistakes their silence for strength. She thinks their emotional unavailability is just a challenge she's been called to conquer. And let's be real, sometimes it's not even about them. Sometimes we stay with the wrong people because we're afraid of what being alone might say about us. We think being chosen, even by someone who doesn't truly see us, is better than waiting to be seen completely. But you were not created to be half-loved. You weren't made to chase, to beg, to plead. You were made to be, to stand, to receive. There's a cost to compromise. Every time you lower your standards, you teach the world how to treat you. You give away your boundaries one decision at a time. You start to believe that mediocrity is all you deserve. And soon you become a stranger to yourself, living a life that doesn't reflect your calling, walking in shoes that don't fit, smiling through pain you never should have tolerated in the first place. Loving someone shouldn't mean losing yourself. But when a woman lowers her standards, that's exactly what happens. She disappears behind their potential, behind their promises, behind their pain. She thinks her love can change them, save them, fix them. But love doesn't demand self-abandonment. Real love requires truth, honesty, alignment, and most of all, it requires both people to show up fully, not one person doing the heavy lifting while the other coasts. And here's the dangerous part, temporary people are often charming. They know just enough to keep you hooked, just enough to make you second-guess your instincts. They feed off your empathy, your softness, your willingness to see the best in them. They give you just enough to stay, but never enough to grow. And when you start making excuses for them, when you start lowering your expectations just to maintain the connection, that's when you lose your footing. It's not love if you have to beg for the bare minimum. It's not partnership if you're doing all the work. And it's not a relationship if the only thing keeping it together is your fear of letting go. She confuses attention with affection, and that confusion becomes the foundation for some of the most damaging choices she'll make. Because attention feels good, it feels warm, validating, even intoxicating. When someone notices you, compliments you, texts you back quickly, or reacts to your photos, it gives you a rush. It triggers something deep within you that whispers, if you matter, you're seen. And in a world where so many women have been made to feel invisible, attention can feel like love. But it isn't. Affection is rooted in care, in consistency, and intention. It's not about who shows up when it's convenient, it's about who stays present even when the lights aren't on you. Attention is loud, it's showy, often performative. It floods your notifications but leaves your soul empty. Affection is quiet, steady. It checks in on your heart, not just your appearance. It doesn't just want to see your body. It wants to understand your mind, your dreams, your fears. But when a woman hasn't learned to separate the two, she'll settle for the flash of attention, thinking it's the light of love. She starts to believe that the ones who look her way the most must care the most, that the compliments, emojis, and sweet nothings must mean something real. But attention is easy. Anyone can give it. Affection costs, it requires effort, presence, emotional investment. And when you don't know the difference, you'll find yourself caught up in connections that sparkle on the outside but are hollow on the inside. You'll stay in situations where you feel seen but never truly valued. There's a reason people chase attention. It offers instant gratification. It's a quick fix for deeper insecurities. But what happens when the attention fades? When they stop replying as fast, stop liking your posts, stop calling every night. If attention is all you had, then the connection collapses. But when there's real affection, it doesn't fade with time. It deepens, it roots itself in understanding. And it doesn't disappear when someone new catches their eye. The woman who confuses the two often finds herself in a cycle of performing. She learns to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, post at certain times just to get noticed. She becomes addicted to being seen, but never asks if she's truly known. She collects admirers but starves for intimacy. She mistakes flirtation for connection, possession for protection, jealousy for love. She's so used to crumbs that a little attention feels like a full meal. This kind of woman often thinks, if he didn't care, he wouldn't be here. But attention doesn't require care. It only requires curiosity. A person can be curious about you and still not care about your well-being. They can be entertained by your presence without ever intending to build a future with you. They can enjoy the idea of you, the energy you bring, and still leave you empty because they never came to pour into you in the first place. Attention will show up when it's convenient. Tito me, it'll call you late at night, comment when you're looking your best, send a message when they're bored. But affection shows up in the small moments, in the mundane, in the real. It checks on you when you're quiet. It holds space for your sadness, not just your selfies. It celebrates your mind, not just your makeup. It honors your heart, not just your hips. When a woman lives on attention, she's constantly hungry. She's constantly waiting for the next hit of validation. She becomes emotionally dependent on how others see her, and that dependency leads to desperation. She starts tolerating the bare minimum and calling it love. She starts believing that consistency is boring and chaos is passion. She loses her discernment, her power, her ability to protect her own peace. And the people who give her attention know it. They know they don't have to commit. They know they don't have to show up fully. They know a few kind words and the right timing is enough to keep her around. So they breadcrumb her. They give her just enough to stay close, but never enough to grow. And because she's convinced herself that attention equals affection, she keeps hoping for more from people who have already shown her their capacity. The saddest part is that a woman who lives off attention rarely gets to experience real love, because real love doesn't always look like a highlight reel. It's not always thrilling or Instagram worthy. It's not about being wanted by everyone. It's about being chosen by someone. Not for how you look, but for who you are. Not for what you give, but for what you carry within. She repeats patterns but expects different outcomes, and in doing so, she builds cycles that disguise themselves as seasons. What she calls a bad luck is often just unhealed behavior wearing a new outfit. It's not a coincidence, it's a consequence, because when a woman refuses to examine her patterns, she unknowingly creates a script for her life that plays on repeat. Different faces, different names, but the same story. She finds herself in situations that feel all too familiar, wondering why love keeps hurting, why friendships keep ending, why peace never stays long enough to unpack. Patterns are not just about who she attracts, they're about what she tolerates, what she believes, and what she thinks she deserves. A woman who keeps reliving the same emotional storms hasn't yet checked the weather within. She hasn't paused to ask herself, why do I keep ending up here? She thinks she's starting over, but really she's pressing rewind. She thinks a new relationship will bring change. But if her mindset hasn't shifted, the result won't either. Growth isn't about movement, it's about transformation. You can leave a toxic situation and still carry the poison with you if you haven't learned the lesson. Repeating patterns often comes from a place of emotional familiarity. If she grew up in chaos, peace can feel boring. If she was raised to equate love with struggle, she'll reject anything that feels too easy. Dysfunction starts to feel like home, so she gravitates toward it even when she knows better. She might say, I just have a type, but what she's really saying is, I keep choosing what mirrors my pain. And the scariest part is that the pattern won't break until she recognizes that she's a participant in it, not just a victim of it. She may find herself constantly being the fixer, the healer, the rescuer. Always pouring, always proving, always staying too long. She doesn't ask if the person is capable of reciprocating, she only asks if they're willing to receive. And when things fall apart, she tells herself that maybe I didn't do enough, instead of asking, was this ever mine to carry? The pattern is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. It shows up as over-explaining, second-guessing, downplaying her needs. It shows up in her silence when she should speak, in her endurance when she should walk away. She keeps thinking next time will be different. But next time won't be different if she's still the same. Healing is not a matter of time. It's a matter of truth. Until she faces the truth of her own behaviors, her boundaries, her self-worth, she'll keep finding herself in rooms that weren't built to hold her. She'll keep dancing with red flags and calling it passion. She'll keep mistaking consistency for comfort and loyalty for love, even when neither is present. Some patterns are rooted in fear, the fear of being alone, of starting over, of not being chosen. So she clings to what's familiar, even when it's painful. She tells herself it's better to deal with the known than to risk the unknown. But there's no freedom in that mindset. There's no healing in staying stuck. Patterns create prisons when we refuse to challenge them. They build walls around potential and ceilings over purpose. When people disappoint her in the same way, when friendships end for the same reason, when love keeps looking like loss, those are not coincidences. They are clues. Clues that something inside needs to shift. That a belief, a habit, a wound is writing the story, but awareness is uncomfortable. It's easier to blame others, to say, they always leave, than it is to ask, why do I keep opening the door to the same kind of pain? Responsibility doesn't feel good at first, but it's the only road to freedom. Sometimes the pattern is disguised as hope. She believes people will change, that love can rewrite character, that time will soften dysfunction. So she stays, she hopes, she prays. But hope without boundaries is just self-betrayal in a pretty dress. She keeps giving second chances to the same behaviors and calling it faith. But faith without wisdom leads to wounds. And wounds that don't heal become the reason she repeats the same mistakes with a different name. She doesn't realize that her future is waiting on her to stop replaying her past. That her next level requires her to outgrow her last version. The woman she's becoming can't afford to keep choosing from a broken place. She has to pause, reflect, and rewire. She has to become the version of herself who no longer entertains what once appealed to her pain. Because patterns don't break by accident. They break by intention, by decision, by doing the hard work of choosing differently, even when different feels unfamiliar. She silences her intuition to avoid confrontation, and in doing so, she trades her inner truth for temporary peace. Her intuition isn't just a feeling, it's a knowing. It's the voice within that sees through charm, that senses what eyes can't see, that catches red flags before the heart can rationalize them. But when a woman has been taught that her value lies in being agreeable, in keeping things calm, in making everyone comfortable, she begins to doubt that voice. She starts to think that speaking up makes her difficult, that questioning something makes her dramatic, that trusting herself makes her selfish. It starts small, a moment where something doesn't feel right, but she tells herself she's overreacting. A conversation that leaves her uneasy, but she brushes it off. She laughs when something hurts. She nods when she wants to scream. She bites her tongue so often that silence becomes her default. And the more she ignores that inner voice, the quieter it gets. Not because it disappears, but because she's trained herself not to listen. She's learned that keeping the peace is safer than telling the truth. Many women are raised in environments where their survival depends on how well they can read a room, adapt their emotions, and make themselves small. They become skilled at sensing other people's needs while ignoring their own. So when conflict arises, their first instinct is to manage it, not confront it. They'd rather carry the weight of discomfort than risk the possibility of rejection. They'd rather adjust themselves and ask others to adjust their behavior. But silencing your intuition doesn't make the issue go away. It just gives it more space to grow. When a woman ignores her intuition, she gives people permission to mistreat her. Not because she's weak, but because she's been conditioned to believe that peace means silence, that love means endurance, that being chosen means never rocking the boat. So she minimizes her needs, she second-guesses her instincts, she convinces herself that maybe she's just being too sensitive, but being sensitive isn't the problem, it's a superpower. The problem is living in a world that makes women feel ashamed for feeling too deeply, for knowing too much, for speaking too clearly. She'll start making excuses for behavior that doesn't align with her values. She'll tell herself someone had a rough day, that they didn't mean it that way, that maybe she misunderstood. And even when the pattern repeats, even when the discomfort deepens, she stays quiet, because speaking up might lead to an argument. It might lead to distance. It might lead to the end. And the idea of loss feels heavier than the truth she's carrying. But what she doesn't realize is that every time she chooses silence over truth, she loses a piece of herself. Intuition isn't loud. It doesn't beg for attention. It whispers. It nudges. It speaks in subtle ways, through energy, through discomfort, through dreams, through restlessness. And the more a woman honors it, the stronger it gets. But when she consistently overrides it to keep others happy, she creates a disconnect within herself. She starts to live from the outside in, always adjusting to what others expect, instead of living from the inside out, grounded in what she knows to be true. Avoiding confrontation often comes from a fear of being abandoned or misunderstood. She fears that if she says how she really feels, someone will leave. That if she holds someone accountable, they'll label her as too much. So she becomes emotionally flexible, always bending, never breaking, but always exhausted. She wears a smile but is heavy. She shows up but she's detached. She stays in spaces that drain her because walking away feels like failure. But staying silent is not strength, it's self-betrayal wrapped in politeness. There's a difference between being peaceful and being passive. Peace requires honesty, it requires boundaries, it requires courage. But passivity requires you to disappear. It asks you to deny what you feel, what you need, and what you know. And the longer a woman does this, the harder it becomes to trust herself. She starts seeking external validation for what she already knows inside. She needs other people to confirm what her spirit already revealed, and when they don't, she doubts herself even more. Sometimes the confrontation she's avoiding isn't with another person, it's with herself. It's the mirror moment she's been putting off. The one where she has to admit that she knew better but didn't do better. The one where she realizes that her silence wasn't peace, it was fear. And fear can be convincing. It tells you that speaking up will ruin everything, that naming the problem will make it worse. That protecting your heart is selfish, but fear never tells the full story. Fear never reveals the freedom on the other side of truth. She invests in potential, not patterns, and that becomes the trap she keeps falling into. Potential is attractive. It glows with promise, it whispers what could be. It paints visions of the future that feel too beautiful to walk away from. It tells her, if you just love him a little more, if you just hold on a little longer, he'll become everything you dreamed of. And so she pours. She nurtures, she believes, but potential is not reality. Potential is a projection, not a promise. And when she chooses potential over patterns, she's choosing to live in hope instead of truth. The pattern is already present. It's in the way he avoids accountability. It's in the way he communicates when he's upset. It's in how he shows up inconsistently, how he makes her question her worth, how he apologizes without changing. These are the patterns that speak louder than words, louder than dreams, louder than charm, but she looks past them. She clings to the good moments, the soft words, the times he got it right. She builds an entire future off of glimpses of growth, rather than evidence of transformation. And in doing so, she delays her own evolution. She becomes the builder, the fixer, the believer. She romanticizes struggle, thinking it's a requirement for real love. She tells herself that her patience is proof of her strength, that her endurance is a virtue. And while grace is powerful, when it's misapplied, it becomes permission. He doesn't have to change because she keeps adapting. He doesn't have to grow because she keeps shrinking to make room for his immaturity. She tells herself he's on his way, that change takes time, that love is supposed to be hard, but love isn't supposed to cost her clarity, her peace, or her dignity. When a woman invests in potential, she becomes emotionally bankrupt. She gives and gives, but the return never comes. She starts questioning her own intuition. She starts wondering if she's expecting too much. She starts blaming herself for someone else's lack of growth. And the most dangerous part is that potential looks a lot like hope, but hope without action is empty. Dreams without discipline are illusions. She's not crazy for seeing what he could be, but she's hurting because she keeps ignoring what he is. Patterns are the proof. They tell the real story. They show who a person is when they're no longer trying to impress. They reveal what someone values, how they treat others, how they handle conflict, how they respond to boundaries. And patterns don't lie. They might come dressed in excuses and apologies and promises, but they always tell the truth. And when a woman becomes more loyal to the version of someone she created in her mind than to the reality of who they've shown themselves to be, she sets herself up for disappointment. She keeps hoping that her love will be enough. That if she just believes harder, gives more, stays longer, he'll finally rise into the man she sees in him. But people don't change because we love them. They change because they decide to. They change because they're willing to face themselves. She can't praise someone into maturity. She can't nurture someone out of their trauma. She can't carry the weight of someone's growth while ignoring her own. That's not love. That's sacrifice. And love was never meant to be a one-sided offering at the altar of potential. Even when the signs are clear, even when the cycles repeat, she stays because the story she's told herself is louder than the truth unfolding in front of her. She's attached to the dream. She's addicted to the what if. And so she tolerates patterns that contradict the very love she's trying to create. She explains away the inconsistencies. She highlights the rare good days and downplays the bad ones. She tells her friends, "You don't see the side of him I see," without realizing that the version she sees is the one that barely shows up. And underneath it all, there's fear. Fear that if she lets go, she'll miss out on the man he's becoming. Fear that all her effort will go to waste. Fear that someone else will reap the benefits of her labor. But staying for the sake of investment is not love, it's emotional gambling. Hoping that one day all the pain will be worth it. That one day he'll finally become the man she fought so hard to help him become. But the truth is, when she invests in patterns instead of potential, she protects her heart. She chooses reality. She honors her work. She calls brokenness strength, and in doing so, she wears her wounds like armor instead of healing them. Somewhere along the line, she was taught that survival equals power. That making it through the fire means the fire didn't touch her. That if she just keeps moving, if she just keeps showing up, if she keeps the pain tucked neatly behind her lashes and her lipstick, no one will question whether she's okay. But strength isn't just about surviving. It's about recovering. It's about recovering. And recovery requires honesty, softness, vulnerability, the very things she's been conditioned to avoid. She's the one everyone calls when they need help, the dependable one, the one who always says, "I got it." Even when she doesn't, she walks through storms like they're sunshine. She minimizes her needs because she was taught that having needs makes her weak. She makes jokes out of her pain, shrugs off deep wounds and calls it growth. But pushing through isn't healing. Smiling through tears isn't peace. And labeling every heartbreak as a lesson doesn't mean the lesson has been learned. Sometimes what she calls strength is just unprocessed pain in disguise. When people tell her she's so strong it feels good. It feels like recognition. It feels like all her suffering was worth it. But what they're really seeing is her silence, her suppression, her self-neglect. They see the woman who never complains, never asks for help, never slows down. They see the version of her that performs strength, but rarely the one that sits alone, exhausted, drained, aching for someone to just hold space for her. And because she's praised for her ability to carry so much, she believes that putting it down would make her a burden. She doesn't trust rest. Rest feels like laziness, stillness feels like failure, softness feels like risk. So she keeps going, keeps pouring, keeps throwing up, but she's running on empty, offering from a deficit, operating from a place of depletion. And over time, that kind of performance takes a toll. Her body starts to speak, her spirit grows quiet, her joy becomes mechanical. She's present but not whole, functioning but not flourishing, alive but not living. She may call it strength, but it's really self-abandonment. She doesn't cry because she believes tears make her look weak. She doesn't speak her truth because she thinks silence makes her more lovable. She holds in rage, sadness, confusion because somewhere along the line, someone made her believe that being emotional made her less of a woman. So she toughens up, she builds walls. She convinces herself that needing people is dangerous, that depending on someone is setting herself up for disappointment. But isolation is not empowerment. Emotional suppression is not wisdom. Independence without intimacy is not freedom. There's a difference between strength and survival. Strength is rooted in resilience, but it also includes softness. It holds space for humanity. It allows tears, rest, support. Survival, on the other hand, is just about making it through. And too many women have confused surviving with thriving. Just because you carried it doesn't mean you were meant to. Just because you handled it doesn't mean it was healthy. Just because you made it look easy doesn't mean it wasn't destroying you from the inside out. Sometimes she's angry but calls it motivation. Sometimes she's lonely but masks it with busyness. Sometimes she's hurting but wraps it in humor. She's learned how to function in her dysfunction so well that even she forgets it's there. She has normalized her own emotional neglect. She celebrates the fact that she doesn't need anyone, not realizing that needing people is not a weakness. It's human. She's proud of how little she feels, how little she reacts, how little she lets things bother her. But numbness isn't strength, it's a warning sign. It's a warning sign. What she needs is not more applause for how strong she is. What she needs is permission to fall apart, to admit that she's tired, that she's still healing, that she's not as okay as she pretends to be. She needs a space where she doesn't have to be on, where she can be held, not just seen. Loved, not just admired, where she can trade the armor for authenticity, because real strength doesn't lie in how well she hides, it lies in how bravely she chooses to heal.